In early October 2025, authorities in Brazoria County, Texas, discovered a crime that exposed deep systemic and psychological failures. Oninda Nina Romelus, a 33-year-old mother, was found at a gas station with her injured children inside her vehicle.
Tonight, we're uncovering disturbing new details about a mother accused of shooting her 4 children, killing 2 of them. This is 31-year-old Oninda Romelus, seen here in a 2022 mugshot from Georgia when she was arrested on drug charges. We're also learning Child Protective Services had previously been called to her home, but details of that case remain unclear.
Troy Class has been following all of this since the weekend, and he spoke with the suspect's father earlier today. He's in Angleton for us tonight. Troy?
The incident quickly drew national attention, not for brutality alone, but for the troubling history that led to it. Years of untreated mental illness, prior CPS involvement, and apparent religious delusions had gone largely unnoticed. As investigators retrace her actions and mental state leading up to the shooting, the case raises pressing questions about mental health intervention, firearm access, and institutional oversight. It is a story not of sudden violence, but of gradual decline, one that reveals how silence, bureaucracy, and unaddressed instability can converge into tragedy long before the moment it reaches public view. Stay with us as we unravel this shocking story and uncover the heartbreaking details of what led to this senseless loss. Before we begin, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from, and what are your thoughts as the story unfolds? Welcome to True Crime Tales, where we reveal the crimes that shock communities and the secrets hidden behind closed doors. These are real people, real events, real consequences. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's begin. Oninda Nina Romelus's story begins quietly, almost unremarkably, in the suburbs of Porter, Texas. She was a woman few people truly knew, even those who lived next door. Records trace her origins to Georgia, where she spent her early years before eventually relocating to Texas. What little remains of her public life shows a woman who, at one time, sought answers in unconventional places, most notably when she appeared on the courtroom television show Paternity Court around 2013. The episode centered on her eldest child, a boy whose paternity she sought to confirm. To many viewers, she seemed calm, polite, and collected, a mother trying to find clarity. But years later, her name would resurface under entirely different circumstances. Romelus was a mother of 4, a 13-year-old boy, a 9-year-old girl, an 8-year-old boy, and a 3-year-old daughter. Neighbors described the children as polite and well-behaved, often seen riding bicycles or playing outside after school. They appeared to live stable lives, and no one in the community could recall seeing signs of abuse or distress. Yet behind that calm surface, something was unraveling within their home. Romelus's life carried traces of instability. In 2022, she was arrested in Fayette County, Georgia, on a misdemeanor DUI drug charge. It didn't draw significant attention, but it revealed an early pattern of reckless decision-making. The Texas Department of Family and Protective Services later confirmed they had prior involvement with her household, though the reasons remained confidential. Those who knew her described her as private and reserved, rarely sharing personal details. Some acquaintances recalled moments where she seemed distracted or spoke in ways that didn't make sense. Early signs, perhaps, of an untreated mental health struggle. Professionally, little was known about her employment. She didn't maintain a strong digital presence and had few public posts on social media. Her days revolved around her children, their routines, their meals, their activities. Yet isolation became her defining characteristic. The family's quiet life concealed the growing cracks in her mental and emotional state. Those cracks widened with time, leading to a tragedy that no one could have predicted. Before the incident, some neighbors noted changes in her behavior. She spoke increasingly about spiritual forces, about evil around her, and battles she needed to win. Her words were often dismissed as eccentric or faith-driven, but to those who listened closely, they carried undertones of paranoia. No formal mental health diagnosis or treatment was ever recorded, but her erratic behavior before the event suggested something was deeply wrong, a mind battling delusions, possibly untreated psychosis. The children's lives represented the innocents caught in the crossfire of their mother's deterioration. The eldest, at 13, was known for protecting his siblings and doing well in school. Teachers described him as responsible, bright, and mature beyond his years. The middle children, aged 8 and 9, were close in age and often together, sharing a sibling bond that made them inseparable. They were airlifted to a Houston hospital after the tragedy, critically injured but miraculously alive. The youngest, just 3 years old, was found in her car seat, a victim unable to understand the horror unfolding around her. Despite the outward normalcy, subtle warning signs hinted at what was to come. Romelus had grown more withdrawn, occasionally posting cryptic messages referencing darkness and spiritual attacks. Friends and neighbors reported she often seemed exhausted, overwhelmed, and increasingly detached. Her interactions with her children shifted from warm to distant, though no one reported overt neglect. For those who had once seen her as a caring mother, her later behavior was bewildering, as if two versions of her coexisted, one maternal and loving, the other fearful and consumed by unseen threats. In the months leading up to the event, Romelus's isolation deepened. She reportedly stopped attending social gatherings and limited her communication with relatives. She began speaking in fatalistic terms, that the world was ending, that they were coming for her, and that she had to protect her babies. These phrases would later take on chilling meaning after the incident. No one knows what triggered her final break. Some investigators point to financial stress. Others cite untreated mental illness or substance relapse. What is known is that by the time she placed her children in the car that morning, her perception of reality had shifted entirely. She wasn't a mother driving her kids to safety. She was, in her own distorted view, carrying out a mission she believed necessary to protect herself and them from something she thought was darker than life itself. The background of Oninda and Nina, Romelus, reveals not a monster, but a woman consumed by delusion, disconnected from support systems, and unnoticed by the institutions that might have intervened. It highlights the devastating consequences of mental instability left unchecked, and the silence that often surrounds mothers in crisis. Beneath the surface of an ordinary life in Porter, Texas, a psychological storm was gathering, one that would eventually claim innocent lives and leave a community questioning how such darkness could grow unnoticed. By the time her story made national news, those who once lived near her struggled to reconcile the woman. They knew what the crime she was accused of committing. The tragedy was not born in a single night. It was a result of years of quiet deterioration, isolation, and fear that went unseen until it was far. In the hours before dawn, Oninda and Nina Romelus left her Porter, Texas home with her 4 children. No one knows why she decided to drive south that morning, but evidence later showed the route traced straight toward Brazoria County. Investigators believe this was no random trip. It was deliberate, methodical, and deeply unsettling in hindsight. At approximately 4 a.m., gas station surveillance footage captured Romelus pulling up to a pump. She appeared calm, purchasing $56 worth of fuel before walking slowly around the vehicle. There were no signs of struggle, no one else nearby, no panic in her movements. A few minutes later, she called for help, or at least that's what dispatchers thought. "Come to my location," she reportedly said. Deputies arrived within minutes to find her standing outside her vehicle, silent and motionless, her gaze fixed somewhere far beyond the headlights. Inside the car, the scene was horrifying. The 13-year-old boy lay dead in the front passenger seat, his body showing signs of close-range gunfire. In the back seat were the 3 youngest, the toddler and 2 others, all struck by multiple bullets. 2 clung to life. The youngest, just 3 years old, was motionless in her car seat. A handgun lay nearby, its details unreleased by investigators, but quickly identified as the murder weapon. Romelus did not resist arrest. She offered no emotion, no visible confusion or remorse.
Tonight, we're uncovering disturbing new details about a mother accused of shooting her 4 children, killing 2 of them. This is 31-year-old Oninda Romelus, seen here in a 2022 mugshot from Georgia when she was arrested on drug charges. We're also learning Child Protective Services had previously been called to her home, but details of that case remain unclear.
Troy Class has been following all of this since the weekend, and he spoke with the suspect's father earlier today. He's in Angleton for us tonight. Troy?
We've been working to learn more about Romelus, who is in jail, and any motive for the shooting. Meanwhile, in newly obtained court documents, we're learning about what Romelus told investigators after she was arrested, but a motive for the shooting is still unclear.
New details are beginning to emerge after 4 children were found shot in a car at an Angleton gas station. A 13-year-old boy and 3-year-old girl died. An 8-year-old boy and 9-year-old girl still recovering.
Brazoria County deputies responded to an unthinkable, unimaginable tragedy.
The kid's mom, 31-year-old Oninda Romelus, is now in custody, charged with murder, and according to charging documents, gave disturbing statements to the Brazoria County Sheriff's Office investigators who spoke with her after the shooting. Court documents obtained by KHOU 11 share Romelus told investigators her children were with the devil. According to the affidavit, law enforcement says surveillance video shows Romelus drove to this gas station off Highway 288 in Angleton, where she called 911. When asked during her interview why she called authorities, Romelus told investigators, quote, "Instead of them doing it to me, I'm going to do it to them," and continued saying, "Kill them all." Romelus lived at this home in Porter for just a few months with her 4 children, identified in court documents as Ocario Covington, Amora Chappelle, Kylie Romelus, and Traviel Downer. Neighbors telling our Orco Manna the children were happy and they saw them just a few days ago.
He always waves and we tell him hi, and they come back by, and I have a little Yorkie, and sometimes she'll stop and ask if she can pet the puppy. Just seeing them Friday, and they were happy and on their way, telling us hi and bye, and figuring I would see them again Monday.
The home is in the New Caney ISD. We reached out to the district asking if the kids attend school, and they replied stating while they're deeply saddened, out of respect for the investigation, the district wouldn't provide information about the individuals or their connection to our schools. Meanwhile, today, Romelus's dad told me on the phone from his home in Georgia he's trying to understand what happened.
Romelus is still being held on a $14 million bond. The surviving children are still recovering in the hospital. Troy Kless, KHOU 11 News.
Such a tragic case with so many questions. Troy Kless with what we do know tonight. Appreciate you. We'll be following this story closely. You can find the latest developments on air, online, and on the KHOU 11 mobile app.
Witnesses describe her demeanor as detached, quiet, and unnervingly calm. She complied with every command, allowing deputies to handcuff her without hesitation. Her first words during interrogation set the tone for the investigation. "They were with the devil," she said, her voice steady. "You can't take me without me taking you." Detectives began piecing together the sequence of events. Physical evidence, gun residue, DNA traces, and ballistic patterns confirmed she was a shooter. But questions about when and why the killings occurred remained. Blood spatter analysis suggested the shootings took place before arrival at the gas station, possibly during the drive from Porter. That theory was strengthened by the lack of shell casings or ballistic fragments near the fuel pumps. Investigators turned to phone records, hoping for clues. They discovered fragments of text messages that indicated emotional instability, though no explicit threats or plans. Her last confirmed digital activity was hours before the shooting, then silence. Forensic teams continue to trace the route she traveled, pulling GPS data to identify possible prior stops. During her recorded statements, Romelus repeatedly denied calling 911, insisting she had called the devil. The repetition of that phrase, combined with her earlier delusional statements, steered investigators toward a psychological motive rather than one rooted in domestic conflict. Autopsy results later confirmed close-range gunshot wounds on all victims. The precision of the shots, particularly those of the front seat victim, implied an intentional act rather than chaotic violence. Toxicology tests are pending, but early findings suggest no immediate substance involvement, though her history includes a 2022 DUI arrest involving drugs. Authorities believe she may have experienced a psychotic episode, a break with reality leading her to perceive her own children as threats. Neighbors later recalled her recent fixation on spiritual warfare, demons, and unseen forces. Weeks before the killings, she reportedly told a friend, "Something evil is trying to take my kids." By mid-morning, the gas station became a controlled crime scene swarmed with forensic investigators, detectives, and child welfare agents. 2 surviving children were airlifted to Houston hospitals, both in critical but stable condition. The bodies of the deceased were transported for autopsy as police searched her home for additional evidence. During booking, Romelus showed no resistance or outward remorse. Surveillance footage from the jail shows her sitting upright, expression blank, staring at the floor. She spoke only when prompted, asking once, "Are they with God now?" before falling silent again. The investigation that followed aimed to establish not just what happened, but why. Detectives examined her history, her single motherhood, prior arrest, and alleged CPS involvement to determine whether warning signs had been overlooked. Officials confirmed that Child Protective Services had prior contact with her household, but could not disclose specifics due to confidentiality laws. Her statements, though fragmented, shaped the prosecution's understanding of her mental state. She described feeling watched, followed, and tested by her children, phrases consistent with delusional paranoia. Experts later classified the event as a potential case of psychosis-induced filicide, a rare but devastating phenomenon where delusions override maternal instinct. The physical evidence, ballistic analysis, gunshot residue, and surveillance footage showing her alone eliminated any possibility of a second suspect. Prosecutors filed 2 counts of capital murder and 2 counts of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Her bond was set at $14 million. Legal analysts anticipate her defense will focus on insanity, supported by psychiatric evaluation and history of delusional thinking. The prosecution, however, maintains the shootings were intentional, emphasizing her deliberate actions after the killings, fueling the car, contacting authorities, and waiting calmly. In the end, the final hours of Oninda Romelus's family remain both clear and incomprehensible. Clear in the sequence of events, a drive, a stop, a call, yet incomprehensible in motive and meaning. The line between sanity and psychosis, faith and delusion, remains blurred. What began as a routine early morning drive ended as one of Texas's most haunting domestic tragedies, leaving investigators and the public questioning how darkness could grow so quietly inside a mother's mind. The Oninda Nina Romelus case presents a disturbing psychological and legal intersection between delusion, paranoia, and the destruction of maternal instinct. Experts examining her behavior point to symptoms consistent with acute psychosis, a mental break often marked by loss of reality and disorganized thought patterns. Her repeated references to the devil and claims of acting in self-defense against her own children suggest she experienced command hallucinations or fixed delusions, hallmarks of psychotic disorders. Such cases often arise in women facing extreme isolation, unrelenting stress, and undiagnosed postpartum conditions. In Romelus's life, those elements seem to converge: financial instability, a history of erratic behavior, and the absence of a strong support system. Neighbors notice her speaking more frequently about spiritual warfare and unseen forces, reflecting a growing disconnect from reality. Religious delusions, particularly those involving perceived possession or demonic influence, can escalate into violent acts when a parent believes harm is imminent. Forensic psychiatrists analyzing the case have proposed that Romelus likely entered a delusional spiral where she viewed herself as both victim and savior. She expressed fear that her children were with the devil, a phrase investigators interpreted as evidence of distorted reasoning and paranoia, not hatred or intent for personal gain. Her mental instability appears to have been compounded by a lack of treatment. Though she had no official psychiatric record, her 2022 DUI arrest hinted at possible substance misuse, another risk factor for psychosis. Toxicology results remain pending, but experts note that even in the absence of drugs or alcohol, stress-induced psychotic breaks can occur, particularly in socially isolated individuals. From a legal standpoint, the case enters a complex territory. Romelus faces 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, with a total bond of $14 million. During her first court appearance, conducted via video, she remained silent, expressionless, and unresponsive, prompting speculation about her competency to stand trial. Her defense team is expected to seek a psychiatric evaluation to determine if she was sane at the time of the killings or capable of understanding the proceedings. The prosecution maintains that Romelus acted with awareness and premeditation. They point to her deliberate sequence of actions after the shootings, driving to a gas station, fueling her car, and making contact with authorities. To them, these steps suggest she understood her behavior and its consequences. The defense, however, will likely argue that her actions were directed by delusion, not intent, that she perceived her children as possessed and believed she was saving them, not destroying them. This central conflict between premeditated murder and psychosis-driven filicide will define the courtroom narrative. Forensic evaluations will analyze her speech, coherence, and belief systems in the hours following her arrest. They'll examine whether her delusions were chronic or acute, and whether she had prior warning signs such as auditory hallucinations or erratic religious statements. Meanwhile, Child Protective Services has assumed custody of the surviving children, both recovering from critical injuries. Relatives have begun petitioning for guardianship, but the trauma of witnessing such violence will likely shape their lives indefinitely. The court's decision will not only determine Romelus's fate, but also reveal whether the state views her as a calculating killer or mentally ill woman abandoned by the system. Public reaction to the case reflects widespread unease. Residents of Porter and Angleton struggled to reconcile the quiet mother they knew with the crime she's accused of. The media's rediscovery of her decade-old paternity court appearance has only intensified scrutiny, transforming the tragedy into a national talking point. Commentators now debate the failings of mental health infrastructure, the warning signs missed by social services, and the role of religious delusion in modern psychosis. Ultimately, this case underscores a chilling truth. Untreated mental illness can silently evolve into catastrophic violence. As the trial unfolds, it will test not only the boundaries of legal responsibility, but also society's willingness to confront the invisible suffering that precedes acts of horror. In Brazoria County, Texas, the tragedy involving Oninda and Nina Romelus stunned a nation already familiar with stories of silent suffering and unseen decline. Her case stands as a devastating convergence of mental illness, religious delusion, and institutional neglect. What unfolded on October 4th, 2025, was an impulsive act of violence. It was a final manifestation of a breakdown that had been quietly building for years. Behind the headlines lies a larger narrative about how families in crisis often slip through the cracks, unnoticed until it's too late. The broader themes that emerge from this case are both painful and revealing. The first is mental health and motherhood, a subject often obscured by stigma and cultural silence. In Romelus's situation, there were likely numerous indicators that her mental state was deteriorating. Neighbors recalled her isolation, strange religious talk, and erratic routines. Yet none of those warning signs translated into meaningful intervention. The system that should have recognized psychological distress in a mother of four instead allowed her to withdraw further. This tragedy prompts a critical question. How many similar warning signs go unreported in homes where mothers suffer quietly, afraid of judgment or the loss of their children? Equally pressing is CPS accountability. Records confirm prior involvement from Child Protective Services, but their role remains opaque. Whether they performed safety checks, offered mental health referrals, or closed the case prematurely remains undisclosed. The Romelus children, now forever marked by trauma, were part of a household that had already been on state radar. The unanswered question is whether the agency acted with diligence or simply followed protocol until paperwork replaced protection. This case reignites the debate about the effectiveness of CPS in high-risk homes where psychological instability, rather than visible abuse, is the underlying danger. Then there's gun safety, a recurring factor in family violence. Romelus had previous legal issues, including a DUI in Georgia, and was under CPS observation in Texas. How she obtained a firearm despite these red flags points to systemic failure in background checks and enforcement. Authorities have not yet disclosed whether the gun was legally purchased or obtained through informal means. Regardless, the fact remains, a woman experiencing delusional paranoia had unhindered access to a lethal weapon. Each time such a loophole surfaces, the gap between law and life widens, leaving children, the most offenseless, at the center of its consequence. The fourth theme, religious delusion and psychological intersection, gives this case its most disturbing dimension. Romelus's words after the shooting were chilling. They were with the devil. Such statements reflect a mental state rooted in religious paranoia, a condition where faith transforms into fear. Delusional psychosis often co-opts familiar symbols. For Romelus, religion became both justification and weapon. Psychologists describe this as faith-based psychosis, a tragic distortion where divine protection and punishment blur. Her fixation on demons and spiritual warfare may have merged with untreated psychosis, creating a distorted belief that killing her children was a form of deliverance, not destruction. Media ethics also come into play. Romelus once appeared on the daytime show Paternity Court, a televised spectacle where personal conflict becomes public content. Though that appearance occurred years earlier, its resurfacing in media coverage has raised ethical concerns. Did the humiliation of public scrutiny contribute to her long-term mental instability? Was she ever offer support after becoming a brief viral figure? Cases like hers reveal how fleeting media exposure can haunt private individuals, especially when paired with fragile mental health. The public's consumption of personal pain, amplified through entertainment, becomes part of a cycle that erodes dignity long before tragedy strikes. The cycle of violence is another crucial lens. Romelus's life illustrates how unaddressed trauma, isolation, and instability can evolve into violence directed inward and, in extreme cases, outward. Psychiatrists studying maternal filicide note that such acts rarely stem from rage. Rather, they emerge from psychosis, despair, or the belief that death is a form of protection. Her statements, "Instead of them doing it to me, I'm going to do it to them," reflect a fractured perception of self and world. The violence she inflicted may have felt, in her distorted reality, like self-defense against imagined evil. It is a haunting reminder that untreated psychosis is as much a public safety crisis as it is a personal one. As the case progresses, the aftermath centers on survival, recovery, and accountability. The two surviving children remain in a Houston hospital, recovering from surgeries and beginning a long psychological journey. CPS holds temporary custody, but long-term guardianship is under review, with extended family members expressing interest in taking them in. Forensic teams continue to reconstruct the scene, analyzing ballistic data and Romelus's route from Porter to Brazoria County. Every fragment of evidence builds toward understanding the motive, but in cases rooted in delusion, motive often eludes logic entirely. The legal process now turns on the question of mental competency. Prosecutors argue premeditation, pointing to the fuel stop, the phone call, and the deliberate movement across county lines. The defense is expected to counter with an insanity plea, citing psychosis and religious delusion. Forensic psychologists will determine whether she understood her actions or she was driven by hallucinations and false beliefs. The outcome will test the balance between justice and mercy, a balance often blurred when crime stems from mental collapse rather than malice. Beyond the courtroom, community healing has begun. Residents of Brazoria County, many of them parents, have organized mental health awareness events and memorials for the victims. Churches and local nonprofits are collaborating to provide counseling, recognizing that the trauma extends beyond the Romelus family. This case, while singular in its horror, mirrors countless others in which mental illness goes unseen until it explodes into violence. Still, the most haunting aspect lies in the unanswered questions. Why did she believe her children were a threat? Were there moments when intervention could have changed her trajectory? Could a stronger mental health infrastructure or earlier CPS action have prevented the deaths? And how should the justice system treat someone whose mind was consumed by delusion, criminally responsible, or tragically ill? In the end, the surviving children remain the only living witnesses to their mother's descent into darkness. Their recovery will carry not only physical healing, but the impossible task of reconciling love with terror. The Oninda Nina Romelus case forces a confrontation with society's blind spots in mental health and faith and in the fragile spaces where they intersect. It asks not for pity or outrage, but for clarity. Clarity about how easily silence can turn fatal, and how many more lives might depend on learning from this one. If you found this story as gripping and heartbreaking as we did, don't forget to like this video and share it with others. And if you want to hear more true crime stories that uncover the mysteries behind these tragic events, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss our latest stories, updates, and discussions. Thank you for joining us on this journey to seek justice and explore the truth. Together, we can make a difference. Until next time, stay safe and stay aware.